Good afternoon. Due to the governor's recent order, all members of the Community Investment Review Committee are participating virtually. For virtual meetings, committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. At that time, they will be recognized and unmuted. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A committee member will be recognized and state their vote. Today's meeting is a public meeting. The meeting will also be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel, which can be accessed at www.cityofws.org/2682/video. A recording of today's meeting will be available by next Tuesday on the city's website.
Thank you. Again, I will offer words of welcome to all of you who are here as we off our meeting today. So as we are moving forward, we're going to go ahead and have our roll call.
Okay. Claudette Bailey, the chair, has stated that she is unable to attend today's meeting based on an emergency that came up. Kenneth Pettigrew, vice chair.
Present.
Greg Byer, Northwest Ward.
He's hoping to call in a little bit.
Okay. Kanika Brown, Southeast Ward.
Present.
Dr. Joshua Canzona, South Ward.
Present.
Sam Hickerson, Northeast Ward. Damon Davenport, North Ward.
Present.
Frankie Gist, at large. Dr. Militia Witt Glover, South Ward.
Present.
London McKinney, East Ward.
Present.
Debbie Hunter, West Ward. Francis Pimentel Peralta, Southwest Ward. Walter Pitt Jr., West Ward.
Here.
Gracia Santillan, Northeast Ward. Quamika Shavers, Southwest Ward.
Present.
Charlene Simmons, Southeast Ward. Christy Robinson, Northwest Ward.
Present.
And Kiana Terry, at large. That ends the roll call.
Thank you, Patrice. Based on our roll call, I do have a question about whether we have quorum to approve the meeting minutes.
Yes, we have 7. Let me see. I'm certain we do.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, with that, has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, are there any questions or corrections made to the minutes as they are?
I would move approval.
Mr. Pettigrew, I have some changes. This is Susan Morris, following up from my presentation from last week. If I could make those corrections.
Ms. Morris, the corrections need to come from a committee member.
Yes.
You can go ahead and state any
Sure,
changes.
yes, ma'am. I sent them to Kanika Brown so she can submit those.
Okay.
Okay. So I know you submitted a proposal and it's just a summary of what you submitted. So what changes would you like to state?
The name of the organization that I'm going to be with has changed. Instead of Agile City, it will be Sumo Consulting. It will be a pilot program for the utilizing the Southeast Ward. And then the annual budget of $100,000 will be paid in 25,000 quarterly increments instead of $100,000 quarterly increments. So it's $100,000 total for the annual budget.
Okay, so noted. I may need the name change for the agency, but we'll leave for the purpose of the minutes because that's what was presented. the same name, and then we can update our records for the change name, but definitely the total amount, the quarterly payments, I'll update in the minutes.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other corrections, changes, or comments on the minutes? If so, we have received a, okay. Patrice, can you
Approval as revised.
here? And so, yes, we have received a motion from Mr. Pitt for the minutes to be received as to be revised. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, are there any questions, concerns, any unreadiness? If not, can we please have the approval of the minutes by saying, do we need to do a roll call, Patrice?
I think we are officially supposed to.
Okay.
So let me just go through it really quick. Cynthia
Yes.
Bailey is not here. Kenneth Pettigrew,
Aye.
Greg Byer, Tamika Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Canzona,
Yes.
Sam Hickerson,
Yes.
Damon Davenport, Frankie Gist. I think, is Damon Davenport on the call?
He's here. I see him, but he hasn't said anything.
Okay. Militia Witt Glover,
Yes.
London McKinney,
Yes.
Debbie Hunter,
Yes.
Francis Pimentella, Walter Rennie Pitt,
Yes.
Gracia Santillan, Quamika Shavers.
Present.
Is this a vote for the minutes to be approved as revised?
Yes.
Okay. Charlene Simmons, Christy Robinson,
Yes. And I believe there's a new caller on the line as well.
okay. Kiana Terry,
Present.
okay. Present, and do you approve the minutes as being presented with one revision?
Yes.
Okay. Has anyone joined us since the original roll call or approval of minutes? Okay.
Okay, based on that vote, the motion is passed and the minutes are approved. Thank you all very much for helping us with that process. All right, we're going to move right on with our agenda, and this part will be led by Patrice, where we will review the current and any new project ideas that have been submitted for the committee's consideration. And then I'll be back with next steps after that.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Pettigrew. Meredith, if you can hear me, can you give me access to share my screen? Okay, great. Okay. So if you all can see my screen, what I've done is started to compile a list of your recommendations. I will state that this is really still a work in progress. I am continuing to receive new project ideas, and there needs to be a little bit more time to look at the proposed project dollar amounts. And so I've spoken with some of you directly, and there still needs to be additional meetings to be held to kind of firm up the descriptions and the proposed dollar amounts. So after this meeting, probably next week sometime, I may touch base with you. Some of you have reached out to our department heads directly, and that's okay as well. But one of the things I've also been reminded to tell you or just remind you about the charge. And so this committee's charge is to make recommendations for the proposed equity package of up to $1 million of total expenditures, course, by October 1st. And those recommendations should be around or contribute to poverty reduction or social justice type issues. So when we go through these projects, please keep that charge in mind. We will, before this goes out to the public, I want the committee to have, first of all, a complete and tight list, and then to make sure the list has exactly what you want the public to be able to comment and or vote on. So what I've done is compiled it and numbered it, and then the later part of the document is the actual descriptions, which we won't go in detail today if you've already presented your items. The other thing I was going to mention is that if there are project ideas that can be combined, that would be great too. And I would suggest that maybe you create maybe a subcommittee to discuss possibly combining some of the project ideas. For example, number one is tutors and training centers for virtual learning support. It's possible, just based on the description, that this could either piggyback on the broadband internet access expansion, or it can remain totally as a separate idea, but a lot of it is related to technology and access. I have been in conversation with the IS director both yesterday evening and this morning. Chrissy, he will follow back up with you on your request. And we've talked a little bit about some, your ideas for your project. And also keep in mind that some of these descriptions can remain slightly vague as long as it's clear that it is for a poverty reduction initiative, serving people in low-income communities, or some kind of social justice. And then once council approves it, then those details can be finalized, or a full plan can be shaped. And so the dollar amount that's listed, based on kind of the professional staff's opinion, is the dollar amounts that would be reasonable to pursue a project like that. So I just wanted to make that statement. So 1 through 9, we've already discussed. And after we discuss the new projects, if anybody wants to add to the ones we previously discussed, we'll come back to those. Since our last meeting, we've added projects 10 through 16. Number 10 is additional resources and support for ex-offenders. Sam Hickerson submitted an idea to do more support for ex-offenders. This can be done by contracting out with several other nonprofits. And so, Mr. Hickerson, I'll be glad to talk to you a little bit more after this meeting to kind of shape that and what that looks like. I put a dollar amount of $100,000. It can be an existing city service, or it can be nonprofits that are able to support ex-offenders leaving the prison system. Is that okay? Or did you want to say anything about that?
Oh, that'll be fine.
Okay. All right. And you had a second idea about transportation, which kind of blends into a previous recommendation, number 4, about public transportation improvements. So we may be able just to kind of come piggyback on the idea. That was from Dr. Canzona about forming a subcommittee to continue the work and conversations with the Transit Authority to improve transportation. And we may add a dollar amount to that as well.
Patrice.
Yes.
On that transportation, what I had in mind was possibly volunteers from churches or whomever, or someone to take patients from their home to their appointments and to return them. I found a lot of people had much difficulty with that, much difficulty, and it prevented their getting the necessary medical attention that they needed. TransAid does that,
Right.
but what they do is sort of a roundabout, and a lot of people are unable to access TransAid as such for that purpose. I'll speak with you afterwards on it.
Yeah. I mean, those are excellent points, and I think when Josh submitted his proposal, those are the issues, some of the issues that would probably be able to come out in further discussions with Transit Authority, especially since they already provide TransAid and transportation to appointments and things like that. We can discuss how to improve it. But if you're thinking about something totally new or different, we can talk offline and try to develop that as well for your recommendations.
No, that is, I guess it would be in addition to TransAid or better refining it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, number 11, this was submitted by Kanika Brown. I think did you already review this one, Kanika?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just in an awkward location. So this was a handicap accessible park. I talked to the city recreation and parks director. He was thinking more in the ballpark of $1 million. Kanika has a person that thinks they can do it between $400,000 and $500,000, but she's already discussed this recommendation.
Patrice, this is Rennie. What wasn't in the last bond approval money set aside for recreation and parks? Maybe Ben Rao can address that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Pitt. So yes, the 2018 bond referendum did include funds for recreation and parks projects. I can't remember right off the top of my head how much was approved for recreation projects, but it ran, a variety of needs, including, second phases for Quarry Park and Winston Lake Park, and monies for greenways and several other parks in the city, Washington Park, and so there are a number of projects that would be funded out of that.
Were any of them funded for handicap accessible purposes?
So going back to actually the 2014 bonds, there was money set aside for new parkland acquisition, and the council did approve the appropriation of funds both for the acquisition of land and for the development of a park in the North Ward, right off of Bethabra Road. That's the Nelson Malloy Park. That park was specifically designed to provide amenities for people with special needs, and so there are the equipment there provides opportunities for people with various special needs, to help with textures and I think ultimately we'll have flowers there with scents and just a variety of amenities that are specifically focused on populations with special needs. That's the Nelson Malloy Park in the North Ward.
Yes, I've been out there, and it's nothing compared to what my ideal is for the handicap park here. I've seen that, and it's just not up to my standards for handicapped people. I think it needs to be revamped again, and this is why I put this budget here. Now, I shouldn't have to go to King to view and visit and love their handicap facility. It's designed specifically just for handicapped people. So that's something that I would definitely be fighting for and voicing my opinion on for that.
Ms. Brown, if I may, what kind of amenities are at the park in King that you would be interested in seeing here?
Oh, I tell you, I can go on and on with that. Can I send you an email?
That would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. All right. Generational urban leaders. This was submitted by, I believe, London.
Yes, that's correct.
Would you like to discuss this?
Yes, based on my involvement walking through various communities here, what I've learned from talking to residents in the various neighborhoods is that they know more about what is needed for their communities than many of us could say what is needed to help them out of the poverty environment that they're in. And providing various hubs, so to speak, in various communities where we can provide training for leadership to help them to find the resources that they need specifically for their communities. Most time residents are very easy to talk to one another about the issues that they have versus someone coming from the outside, pretty much dictating to them what is needed. So by developing these various hubs, we provide training, not just for the adults, but for the children, both school age, as well as some of the teenagers that may find themselves torn between going to school and dropping out. But we provide the resources that are available through various organizations. And we have someone to come in and work with them on the various needs of those communities. I can provide more details through a PowerPoint, which I would love to send to you, Ms. Tony.
Okay. Yes, that would be great. Can you talk a little bit about how the $250,000 will be used?
We would have to have a middle person who could come in, especially if we do something like this in our housing projects. We would have someone that would come in to help run the hub, to be there on site, and that would provide, we would have to provide a salary for those individuals, but also set up a budget for every hub to be able to have funding to be able to provide some of the necessary items needed, such as providing a GED teacher to come in and be able to afford many of those that's in those communities to be able to earn their GED. If it's coming in to provide some kind of training, again, provide someone such as from the Goodwill industry that could come in and teach courses such as CNA and various trades within those community areas for job placement. And then when it comes to our youth, if it's possible to get a full-time teacher that could come in and offer tutoring in their community to help even with such as the virtual learning that we have going on at this time, but someone that could be on site to provide the assistance needed through education.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that?
I do.
Okay.
Ms. Tony. I was listening to the proposal and I heard things like the GED program being offered, trades such as CNA, and that's wonderful. So I'm assuming that the benefit of this being held in each community will be that I guess it will be easily accessible to constituents because those programs are already implemented through other programming that have been set up for years. So I'm going to assume that this proposal would is more geared towards more accessibility. Like if something's right there in your community, of course, it becomes more accessible to you then versus you having to get transportation to these particular locations. So I'm going to assume that is the overall pitch of the proposal, is that it will be more accessible to individuals in the community.
Ms. Shavers, that is correct. And it also allows for us to work at the pace of those individuals in that community as well. What I've learned, unfortunately, is that not everybody is up at 8 o'clock to take on some of the courses that may be offered within the community, but at least this way we can meet the individuals where they are and help to hopefully get them to take on a pattern where they find that getting up earlier to get the services that they need is more beneficial than waiting till late evening to look for services.
Who would develop the curriculum?
We would work with both the school system as well as even some of the organizations within the community to develop a curriculum for this.
Thank you.
I might have missed this, but where will this take place?
We would identify the various areas within Winston-Salem that are hardest hit with poverty. Those areas mainly would be in the Southeast Ward, South Ward, as well as the East and Northeast areas. But it does not limit it to other areas in this, within Forsyth County.
Would you plan to utilize existing community centers or churches for this?
When I'm looking, that would be a plus, but if we're going to address our hardest hit areas where poverty is running rampant, we would look mainly to a lot of these housing projects where you have individuals that are dependent on DSS, who with unemployment is high, where there's a need for the children in those areas to better their education. That would be the primary areas to start. See if it's possible to even partner with some of the housing, with our housing authorities to see if it's even possible for us to lease out one of the apartments as the resource center.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKinney.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for describing that. Once again, we'll have all of the details once everything's finalized, typed up, so that the committee can review everything in detail before you make your final decisions on what you want your final list to look like. Okay, so Dr. Militia Witt-Glover submitted number 13, addressing root causes for sustainable change.
Sure, thanks. So my idea was to take a step back and think about ways that we are investing funds and resources in the city with the idea that we are trying to focus on sustainable change to address poverty and hardships in the community. Currently, many of our investments are focused on immediate needs, but aren't addressing the root causes of why we have poverty and hardship in the community currently. And so the idea that was submitted was to take a step back, use some of the funding that's available to look at the current investments within the city to understand what's our long-term strategic plan as a city and how we want to address poverty so that we don't continue to be in the situation that we're in right now, so that we begin to address and move out of the number of individuals in our community who are in poverty and who are suffering from hardships. And so to do that, understanding what is our long-term strategic plan as a city, what programs are we currently funding that are contributing towards moving us to achieving that long-term plan, what's working and what's not working, so that, because there are many things that we are investing in and continue to invest in without really, I think, a strong sense of, are we moving the needle are we moving in the direction that we want to go in? And so once we understand what's working and what's not working to move people out of poverty, to move people out of hardship and not to go back into that place, we can begin to make more meaningful investments in those things that are working well. And then we can make adjustments to programs that are not working well to move us in the areas in the directions that we want to go. Once we understand also what the root causes are, so things like what's causing poverty in our community, that will also help us to understand where our gaps are in programming. And that might also mean focusing some of our attention on policies and systems. And as an example, I know that some of the things that we invest in our community are around job training, which is excellent. But if we also have an issue in the community of not having jobs for people to have once they get trained, or not having jobs that pay a living wage that allow people to move out of poverty, then having job training programs may not be sufficient enough to move the needle on poverty and hardships, if that's what we're trying to do. So understanding what's working, what's not working, what's really caused the root causes of the problems, and then understanding how we can do more of what is working, and then address gaps in what isn't working is my idea. And so once we start to be more efficient in the things that we're doing, I anticipate that we'll save some funding, and then that funding can be used to identify additional opportunities for deeper investment and strategies. So thinking long-term, while I appreciate that we do have $1 million that can be reinvested, if we are not careful in thinking about root causes and thinking beyond this $1 million, what could happen is we could have lots of great programs that at the end of this time frame haven't moved the needle, and we still are trying to figure out how we can continue to fund those programs. And I think what we want to do is make it so that some of these programs aren't things that we have to continue needing, because we've addressed the root problems and gotten beyond those.
Can I ask a few follow-up questions? This is Christy Robinson.
Yes, go ahead, Christy.
I really, really appreciate what you're saying, Dr. White-Glover. I think that's the charge of the committee, is to look at these root issues. Can you clarify how what you're suggesting? I'm trying to understand a little more clearly what you're saying. I really appreciate that you're saying to look at the root causes as opposed to programming, that the charge of our committee is to try to address the root causes of poverty and use this $1 million in a really smart way to move forward and try to make sustainable long-term change. How is what you're proposing of potentially, are you saying, do you want to look at the city budget and use a third party to assess the various programs and where we are? I wasn't 100% clear. And then how is that different than what the Poverty Thought Force has already done?
So I think it's a great question, and I appreciate that. When we had our first meeting, that was one of my initial questions, as well as we have a couple different studies like this and it seems like when I looked at all of those Poverty Thought Force, and there are a couple of other reports that Patrice had mentioned, the very, within I think the top 3 suggestions for all of those was looking at what the city is currently doing, what the community is currently doing, and trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. I'm not sure, we have a lot of programs in our community. I'm not sure that we have a good sense of evaluating whether it's the city's investments or other programs in our community. I'm not sure we have a good sense of what is working and what's not working. But I will say that we've had several reports on poverty, on things like housing in the community, and they all come up with the same conclusions. We don't have sufficient number of jobs. We have a lot of poverty. We don't have a sufficient amount of affordable housing. And what I am concerned about is we aren't going to be able to program our way out of these root causes. We're going to have to get into policy systems and environments and why we are here. What are the policies that are in place that keep us here? And so I think the difference in this is really trying to take those suggestions from the Poverty Thought Force and from some of the other reports and really begin to act on the suggestion that we need to look at how we're spending our funds in the community and whether or not what we're doing is really moving us toward where we need to go. Now, does that need to be a third party? I can't say for sure. Is that somebody that's, on the city's staff that could do that? That requires, I would say, further discussion. Sometimes when you're close to something like this, it's better to have a third party that can look objectively And then that also allows folks that are a part of the city to be able to participate in the process as participants, as opposed to trying to spend their time guiding the process. So, so having a third party be objective and looking at what we're doing as a community, and whether or not we are actually addressing root causes as opposed to putting Band-Aids on things, I think could be a way to go with this idea.
Wasn't that poverty force? Didn't they recommend a poverty czar to coordinate and try to address some of the concerns that you've raised? And I don't know if the poverty czar was ever appointed. Patrice, do you know?
I'm not certain about that. We can look into it.
So I think I can provide a little context around that just a little bit. Is that the Poverty Thought Force recommendation sat for a while, and then some community partners came together, led by United Way of Forsyth County, to put an actual operational structure around the recommendations. What we now know as the Partnership for Prosperity is the result of community funders, both business and nonprofit funding sources, to put funds into of a process around putting those recommendations into play. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the poverty czar was identified, but there is definitely a process in place and folks leading work around that.
And have we, this is Christy Robinson again, have we ever been made privy to the list? I know Dr. Whitt-Glover asked for that at one of our first meetings, I believe, of what exactly, which recommendations of the Poverty Thought Force have been met and which ones have not. Are we aware of which ones have been met by the city?
Let me look into that, Christy. It's a good question. I apologize, Dr. Alicia Whitt-Glover. I do remember you making that request. So I will go back and do some research and just kind of look through the report. The list I gave you is everything that we could identify that the city is currently doing around social justice or anti-poverty. And so that would be the extent of what the city is doing related to the report. Mr. Pettigrew is correct. I mean, the other piece of that is the city contributing to the Partnership for Prosperity to kind of continue that work. So there may be some other efforts outside of kind of city programming that may be a direct response to the Poverty Thought Force, but I would definitely need to research that just to see. And then I think the second piece of that is what are the outcomes? What are, has those programs, if any, been effective to moving the needle on poverty? So I will definitely look into that and try to get you something within a week or so.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
But sorry, Patrice.
No, go ahead.
Before we moved on from this, I did want to provide some comment on definitely being in agreement with what Dr. Whitt-Glover has suggested here, but additionally adding that some of what we will be able to do and some of what we will be unable to do, I think will kind of be shaped by how we engage this particular conversation. Because I do believe that, you know, poverty and social justice are two things, but that, you know, really addressing some of the root issues kind of present here are what we have to. However, the one thing I always say is that at issues like this, it's difficult to actually, at any issue, however you're addressing it, it's difficult to throw money and hope for and hope for results. So my hope that taking what was just shared in this conversation, and finding ways, possibly, if there are programs that we want to do, being able to infuse thinking into those programmatic, so that we can really continue to stay true to, but also really begin to address some of the broader systemic and systematic issues that are at play here.
Okay. So just to wrap up 13, are we not going to put a dollar amount? This would be, or are we saying kind of like Dr. Canzona's recommendation about transportation? Is this going to be a subset of this committee that would like to do more research? Are you recommending that there's a pause on the recommendations for the $1 million, or half of the $1 million, until there's more research around addressing the root causes? I just want to kind of be clear on exactly what is the approach.
I could suggest an amount maybe for a third party or someone to do at least an evaluation of what is currently happening in the city. I don't want to say let's put a pause on spending the $1 million, because certainly while we are looking into what's working and what's not working, there are still issues that are happening in the community that we don't want to put a pause on. But I do think that we need to be thoughtful about what is currently happening, so we don't continue to go down the road of putting a Band-Aid on an issue but not actually addressing it. So I can send separately at least a suggested budget for collecting the information that's already been collected from, or at least summarizing the information from the reports that have already happened, and then looking into how much it would cost to set up some sort of evaluation structure for the programs that are currently in place, so that we can begin to see if they are actually making a difference. So I can send that to you separately.
Does that feed into item number 14, your comments?
So let me transition into 14, because I mean, this was received externally from a community citizen to one of our offices at the city, and they forwarded it to me as a suggestion. So everything below this gray line would be kind of non-committee suggestions. I know 15 and 16 were via Kanika Brown, and so she can speak to those in a minute. But this one was purely a non-committee person, but it did hit elected official. So the person was recommending that the city...
Ms. Tony, I'm so sorry. I wanted to comment on the last thing. I'm so sorry.
Okay, yes.
So I want to go back to the list. When you were asking, you asked a question, and I didn't know if first, let me ask you with the question that you asked about us being able to combine these committees. Is that something to talk about right now, or was that something that you wanted us to discuss later? Because I don't want to take time.
Yeah, we can discuss it in a minute. I just wanted to make sure you all are aware of the new ideas that were submitted first, and then we'll go back to updates on the existing proposals, if anyone had any updates to what they previously submitted, and then we can discuss about potentially combining any, if that's, yeah. So let me just speak about the social justice coordinator submission, and then we will go back to those things.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So the social justice coordinator, someone recommended that the city hire the actual person to look at some of these issues around racial justice, social justice, not so much poverty the way they wrote this up, but this would be just kind of an ongoing evaluation of city departments. They identified specifically the police department as a means of just ensuring that there are systems and processes in place that eliminate or reduce racial profiling, excessive force. He mentioned sexual harassment, religious discrimination, and those types of things. So it's a little vague the way it's written, but it is for an actual position. It was a male, I'm saying he, the person recommended a salary of $50,000 and with benefits would be around $65,000. The one thing I would caution you all about in terms of position requests in your proposal is that it would require ongoing costs. So we really have like a one-time $1 million. And so once that's spent, it's spent. And so when you talk about adding positions, when the next budget rolls around, the city would have to consider, do you continue that or what are the resources to continue funding ongoing costs specifically for positions in particular. So I was just wanting just a note.
A question.
May I?
Go ahead, Shavers.
This is Ms. Shavers. I actually know who wrote that proposal. I was actually in that meeting. I'm not sure how it got to city council because that was supposed to go to the county commissioners, not this. So I not that I need for it to actually be said, curious as to why it came to city council when it was supposed to go to county commissioners, because that is an ongoing position. Definitely not going to give 50%. Never mind. I don't know how this got to this particular committee, but it was supposed to go to county commissioner because I was in on that meeting when it was suggested that, and a group of protesters, and I know this because I am a protest organizer as well, wrote that in understanding that it would be something that is going on. It would be a continuous role. Therefore, it would go to the pocketbook of the county, which is the county commissioners, because this would be something that would be ongoing, not something like this, a one-time allotment.
Okay.
So I don't know how it got here.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate that insight. Ms. Brown?
Yes, so echoing off what Ms. Shaver said, yes. And I think people just need to recognize their civics. A lot of them don't know their civics of where items need to go. And that's something that, maybe we can work on with people with the civics, knowing their civics and where it goes. And also back to the police officer, don't they receive some kind of sensitivity training as part of their job?
They do.
Okay, go ahead.
They do, but but this is not the committee for that.
Okay. All right. So, and off of what Dr. Glover was stating about getting somebody to come in, just make a recommendation as well. Is it possible that we can actually look at an economic development person or economic development team that specializes in these areas that we're discussing today? Just a recommendation, something we can just put online with economic development team. So this is what they do, or individual person. I attended a John Locke Foundation meeting they had a couple of months ago, and they talked about the economic development team or a person. It was really good, and that's why I brought that up.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. I mean, all recommendations are open. So like I said, just feel free to submit something, a package that I can actually do something with, add it to a list, put a dollar amount, and this is your committee. So you all are open to these suggestions and great comments. You've heard from BGeek Technology. I think the name has changed as stated earlier. So Ms. Brown, if you could send me the updates on that, and then I will update the proposal. And I know that the dollar amount is 100,000 total.
Okay.
It'll be $25,000 quarterly.
Okay.
And then the last idea, this is also Ms. Brown. Do you want to talk about the Southeast Ward Male Academy?
Yes, I have Joe on the line. Joe, are you there? Let me see, where is Mr. Joe at?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, all right, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about that since we're working on this piece together? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. So pretty much this is called our Male Academy, and our company is a nonprofit company, and we provide services to individuals with intellectual, developmental disabilities, mental illnesses, and some of the at-risk youth populations. So pretty much what we are doing is we come from a clinical background, and so I've been listening to a lot of the different programs and the programming versus other different things. So I think both aspects play a major role. For us, we look at pretty much that the individuals, so a lot of the at-risk youth population, for instance, they have, I think, to first address that population, we have to see what underlying things are going on. So what we see is that a lot of individuals are undiagnosed, and if they have different mental illnesses going on, or if they have different intellectual disabilities going on, but they haven't been diagnosed, then it's hard to be able to help that population. So you can provide all the programming in the world, and it may not help if you're not addressing those underlying issues. And especially dealing with the African-American population, they are at a huge disadvantage for getting a lot of access to these different therapeutic and clinical services. So I think that's a big thing first to address, and that's something that we do address. So we bring individuals from the behavioral health side and the rehabilitation side, and we're providing this program that pretty much is it's pretty much like a day program, or it can even be an evening program as well, to where we're providing different services. We're giving families the opportunity for resources with police officers to be able to sit down and just have discussions on how to engage and interact on both sides. So for instance, it's just an example, an individual with autism, the way that they're going to view a police officer in a situation is totally different from someone who does not have that disability. The lights that come on the police cars, the way that they may feel like their perception of things, of the officer maybe engaging with them, can put them on the defense very quickly. And so if the officer is not educated on how to deal with that population, then it can just become a huge mess. Same thing with someone with a mental illness. Mental illnesses come from a lot of times just from your environment. So when we're talking about the youth and poverty in these different situations, a lot of them have mental illnesses, again, that are just not diagnosed. So again, we're coming from that background to where we can actually provide a clinical look at things, along with providing these different programmings for services to be able to help these populations.
So thank you, Joseph.
Yes.
The dollar amount that was submitted was $30,000. Can you speak to how you would use those resources?
So again, for the $30,000, the way that we pretty much offer services, a lot of times it's from a kind of like an IEP or ISP perspective, meaning that, we take each individual, so we can either take it from the perspective of the clinical setting and providing these specific therapeutic services. And so with that, that's going to look at the individual, kind of see them engage in different types of programs that we have, or the different services that we offer within the program. And from there, we can write up, hey, what we're seeing, what we're looking at that can possibly be a diagnosis. Hey, they may need to be on some type of different medication based off the characteristics that we're seeing or whatever. Or we can just come from a perspective of just providing the programming and maybe just giving a quick overview of what's going on. So honestly, and the way, like I said, the way that I've written that up was per individual or per a monthly budget, and then it just depends on the amount of individuals also that we have. So with that 30,000, I mean, it's really, that's going to offer services to maybe 4 individuals based off of what we're actually doing. Are we coming from offering them an IEP, an individual plan or individual support plan, or are we just providing these different programs and, sitting down with different police officers and judges and providing that to the family on how each side can engage with each other, also while providing these other programs to really keep that population engaged throughout the day or throughout the evening with meaningful activities. So I hope that kind of addresses. So it just really depends on what side we're coming from, but that's what that 30,000 would go towards staff to be able to do that. But that would depend on how many individuals we have for that, particularly what the budget would be.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Are we ready for discussion and commentary, Ms. Tony?
Just on this Northeast Ward Male Academy. Any questions or comments about that, this proposal?
I heard him say that it would service 4 individuals, or did I hear incorrectly? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's what he stated.
So it is a male academy that will only service 4 individuals out of the community, and we have 3 wards that are grossly in trouble, north, east, and south.
Well,
so
no.
we'll pick 1 individual from each ward, or how would that happen?
Right. So for our program, what I'm saying is for that $30,000 budget, based off of what we're looking at, what's needed. So if we're coming from the IEP perspective, that 30,000 will be able to cover that certified behavioral health and rehab professional with that 30,000 for up to 4 individuals. Now, if the budget increased, then, or if we needed to be able to apply it to more individuals, then of course the budget would need to be more based off the services that we're providing. So we can take up to, we're able to take up to 25 people. We feel comfortable to be able to take up to 25 people at a time, but then that's going to be an increase in the budget. That $30,000 budget would not be able to give us what we need to be able to complete the job based off what the certified behavioral health and rehabilitation professional will provide.
And this fits into the description of, and I don't mean to be callous when I say,
absolutely.
We have been reminded several times the charge of this committee is to approach social justice and poverty. So
right.
How does this fit into that charge? Because I'm familiar with IEPs, my daughter has one, and I'm just trying to figure out with some of these proposals, are we meeting the charge, or are we just throwing out ideas that we would like to see change in our community? And that's not a problem, because then at that point, we all need to do a different level of research so we can be sitting at the right table so something can actually be done. But I don't see how this meets the charge, and most definitely 4 individuals being impacted in the community, $30 or whether we even 30,000 or whether we even increase it to 100,000. That is, I don't see how efficient that would be.
So from the social justice or even racial injustices perspective, my thing is that a lot of that population engages with the police, with that, or just has a lot of different of the social, are seeing with the social injustice. So again, with like even coming from, the George Floyd perspective, or so a lot of individuals are faced with that have mental illnesses are dealing with that police, that police environment, and they're engaged incorrectly. And so, and then they don't have a lot of things to do, as far as program wise. So if we're able to, and like, again, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, the programs and what's going to be offered to them. But if we're able to find out, like, hey, if they have this disability that's going on, they have this mental illness going on, this is maybe why that they're engaging in, they have guns. So they have, there's gun violence, or there's, it's these different things going on because they have this illness going on. So you can't really help them unless you've first able to identify, that. And then, once we identify that, again, the only way we're going to identify that is, one, by putting them in that circle, two, by being able to, give them meaningful things to do.
How would you identify the four? How would you identify the four individuals?
How would we identify the four individuals?
Yes.
We would absolutely have to engage with them. So it would be an interview process. It's working with the families, honestly, working with the families, and then just working, with that particular individual. So again, a lot of individuals that we work with, or children that are not eligible for services for whatever reason, again, we have to meet with the families. We have a checklist that we go by. We have different things that we look for, that we see, and then engaging with them is how we come up with, what they may have this going on, so that they can be seen by a psychiatrist or anything like that.
And Joseph, let me say one thing too. I understand where Ms. Shavers is coming from with the four. If we can come together and do a number again, the individuals that's going to be coming to this project that we're working on, I think that'd be great. And I understand, I hear the frustration in her voice, and that's something that we definitely need to work on together with the numbers. See if we can get a little bit more than four.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Shavers, for your question too, and your concerns.
May I also, I do share in common with you, Ms. Brown, I have a child with special needs. She's globally developmental delayed. So that means for people on the call who may not understand, she does not talk, she does not walk. She is a total care patient, which means everything that she needs has to be done by someone else.
Right.
Okay, so I understand IEPs. I also have a master's degree in education. So I understand all of that. My point is, and while I do respect your proposal as well, how does it fit into the charge? If we're not focusing on the charge, then we're not doing what we were asked to do.
Okay, excellent points. Thank you, Kanika Brown, for your recommendations, and your the Joseph that spoke on your behalf for this proposal. You all keep in mind that we will develop the details of this, and that you will be able to decide where and how this fits within your chart, and what programs or projects you would like to recommend that then will go out to the community. So just because we're developing a list, it'll be as comprehensive as possible. I know there are a few outstanding proposals that I think someone wants to submit. So once we get that, we'll send that out to you and figure out some kind of either evaluation process, or you may rank them, or you may just choose projects that total up to $1 million, or you may want to add some resources to a project in terms of dollar amounts, or take some away. So it's really will be in your hands for the final recommendation. So, so these are just proposals that have been submitted. Now, let me go back up to the top, and Ms. Shavers, you talked about some ideas about combining some of the proposals. So this will be a good time to discuss that. But before you do that, can you mention your title change and any changes to the proposal you submitted on the Heritage Center?
Yes, ma'am. Let me pull it up. So because I was trying to develop this idea as we go along, like many of us, and then you go back and you look at things and you think about things, and then when you are continuously reminded of the charge, you have to go back and look at what you presented. The new name would be the Triad Cultural Arts and Heritage Center. How it fits under social justice and racial equity, we would have festivals such as Kwanzaa and like Juneteenth. We have cultural heritage tours, community conversations, exhibits, literacy programs. That's when we're talking about the big think tanks. And we would partner, of course, with the Urban League, because that would be the location we'll be using. So at least we already have a concrete location that is accessible right now. The Triad Cultural Arts Community and Heritage 365. Some of the outcomes that would fall under the charge would be empowering constituents of their culture, their heritage, their history, increasing engagement opportunities for constituents to come together, have earnest dialogue to change things in the community that need to be changed. There would be a place, a location, a consistent area where they could be able to do that and find resources and individuals who have those plugs that can bring actual change to their communities that they're seeking. Developing Black leadership to increase economic opportunities. I know that that was done for me personally through politics. So this also a way to allow other young people to come in and become entrepreneurs and to be able to develop whatever talents that they may have. It would also forge relationships with various organizations in the community, because those organizations would want to be working with us with big festivals and big programs that we would have. So then that way, that would be an exchange of opportunity that we can offer to participants of the museum. And we could also, like, I've seen some of the ideas. Let me go back to the list. Because some of us are talking about doing the same things, but I think if we come together, we can do these things on a larger scale. So the tutoring and the training center, that can also be collaborated as well. The historical markers, I do like that. Not a huge on the top of the list for social justice, but I do like the historical markers because it is very prideful to be able to walk around the community and see the rich heritage that is here under any culture, Black or brown. It was another one that I saw that we could have all combined it together. And I can only see the list until 11 from where I took it. I can only see it to 11. And then hearing Ms. McKinney's proposal today about having these pretty much centralized locations of coming to communities and helping them to, change their economic and educational position. So that would be somewhat easy and somewhat hard, because you have some communities, because I pretty much am familiar with all the project development makeups. Most of them have a rent office with a small community center attached to it. So then it would only be but so much you can get done in that 1 or 2 rooms that they have at the office for these communities. But if we have like the Urban League downtown, we'll have, space where multiple classes could be going on at one time versus maybe 1 or 2 classes being able to transpire in each community. And downtown being a central location to most of the housing authority developments, such as Cleveland projects, Boston projects, and of course these places have different names now, but most of them, if you're from here, then you know which one is which. Downtown being a centralized location for them to be able to meet and link with the transportation opportunity to help them get back and forth. And while I understand what she was saying, that, some of them may not want to get up early and things of that nature, but you can take, a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. So if the opportunities are being provided in the community, I think that is meeting the community where they are, and in hopes that the community will receive us and take ownership and take right of the opportunities being presented to them. So there were a few ideas that if we come together and we bridge together, and we can ask for a little bit of money, because, we're bridging programs, so that program might need additional funding as well, that we can bring these programs together and make something beneficial for this community that works versus several million little programs that, not saying they won't be efficient, but they just won't be as proficient if it was done together.
Can I piggyback on that? This is Christy Robinson. I have 2 points that I was hoping to make. One, I would like to talk a little bit about the Northwest proposals for broadband. But first, to piggyback on Q's thoughts, I just would like to have Vice Chair Pettigrew, I have some questions directed to you on how we can proceed as a committee. I've felt frustrated a bit by this committee on how we can come together. And it's difficult in this setting, I think, and being on Zoom. And, you know, I understand completely that we're in the middle of a pandemic, but I think it's hard for us. And it seems in some ways we're being set up with this very important charge to be almost competitive. And to Q's point, I would love for us to be more collaborative and have more discussion about these really important proposals that we're all making. How, is there a way that we could change the setup of the committee when we come, or increase communication in some way, or instead of just communicating with our own ward, have setups with communication with other wards? I would love to be more collaborative so we can all work towards a goal together instead of having a more competitive process where it seems like we're all kind of backing our own horse.
I agree,
Mr. Pettigrew, could you touch base on that and help lead us in that way?
And let me just say right before Mr. Pettigrew speaks that I just want to acknowledge that the chair is here as well. So Ms. Bailey has joined the meeting and may want to weigh in on that as well as the chair. But Vice Chair Pettigrew.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey.
I'm sorry.
You're here. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pettigrew, before you answer that question. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Pettigrew, before you answer that question, I want to add to Christy from what she said. Is it possible that we could even get an extension on the time frame that we have to complete this? Because it's obvious that we do need more time to thoroughly vet this out and to be able to present the best possible plan.
Agreed.
I mean, I can speak to the time frame.
Yes, I was about to refer to Patrice on that.
So there was a resolution that the council voted on to form this committee. In the resolution, this committee was to submit recommendations by October the 1st. So that is the guide, the resolution. And we are to stick to that resolution unless council as a whole or majority changes the charge and the time frame of the committee. So I just wanted to state that. I don't know if it's impossible, it's just this is the current charge and it's stated that way.
Is it any way possible that we could send a message to the council with that request?
Ben, do you want to weigh in on that?
So what we being staff could do is perhaps brief the Community Development Housing General Government Committee in September to kind of give them an update, or we could give an update to the council through the weekly communications that the manager sends to them to give them an update on where you all are engaged, to see if they would be, open to, extending your process out, I don't know, another month, whatever you all feel that you need, and just see if they are open to that. I mean, I think it would be, their call really to grant that, but we certainly could provide them an update and seek feedback from them.
Is it possible that we could condense this list of proposals? I mean, we're all passionate about the various things that we have mentioned, but is it possible we could condense this list and begin to work on that as opposed to trying to fix everything? And this would just be a microcosm of the things that need to be done, but we can do a little bit with, do a whole lot with a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the goal would be to condense the list. This list totals up way past $1 million.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, your list cannot be over $1 million. The purpose of this list is to just have all the ideas on one list. So I wanted to make sure everybody could submit a project idea and it shows up on this list. Then you would go through it. Once all the ideas are out here, the descriptions are part of this document, summaries of each item. So once I tighten this up, I will send this out to you all and you all will condense the list. You all will go in and rank your top however many to not exceed $1 million, or you may not recommend up to $1 million for this list. But keep in mind, there's a list that we need to see citizen input. So that's what will happen after this list is tightened. You all agree with everything that's on the list. Then the list will go out to the community for a couple of weeks to get some input. Once you get the input from the community and citizens and neighborhood associations and whatever your contacts are, you'll be able to have a little bit more community data to then make your final decision, which we've scheduled for September 24th. So that will be your final meeting, and you will make decisions, have your final recommendations. So that's the process.
Ms. Tony, also.
Could I ask a question of Ken Pettigrew, please? Ken, would it be appropriate that the committee appoint, let's say, 4 or 5 committee members to go in and assess after Patrice sends her written report of all these various programs, and to decide what programs, if any, there may be, could be combined, and so as to shorten that list, and then get back to the full committee with possible suggestions?
I have, I think, 3 different questions to answer right now, so I'm going to try to answer them all as succinctly as possible. So I think that taps in also a little bit into Christy's question about the entire functionality of the committee. And so my thought, and it is simply only my thought because the committee would have to agree to it as well, would be that possibly having an opportunity, because we've done most of our work currently within our ward, to have an opportunity to engage across wards to get a better and fuller understanding of how these projects represent the needs of the places where the committee members come from. Because I think without that fuller picture, it's possible that we may look at a project and be like, that seems like a lot of money for not a lot of either programming or long-term effect. But we might not fully get the picture of what's going on there. So I think some cross-ward communication and engagement around the ideas presented, or how ideas may ultimately be combined or changed because of that, I think could be very beneficial for us. But additionally to your question, I think that would have to, it would have to be a decision. It would have to be a decision of the committee, really, to form a subcommittee. And part of my question about that is because the resolution that created this committee, I'm not certain that I would have to go back and read the resolution again, but I'm not certain that the resolution itself gave space for the creation of subcommittees. But I feel like if we need to do it, we probably could. But it would be a legal question for me versus a necessity question. Being sure that we're just in line with the resolution. I'm open to that idea, but again, I say it would just have to be a full decision of the committee.
I will say, Ken, you definitely can form subcommittees. And I think the original intent was for some level of collaboration. I think originally it was around, since there were 2 people in each ward, that maybe the wards, but I know that earlier on, there was some comment about it might be more beneficial to do some cross-ward type of collaboration. So collaboration, subcommittees, that is absolutely what the committee can choose to do if they so choose to. But just keep in mind the time frame, that's all.
Yeah. So Patrice and Ben, here would be my question I think on behalf of the committee, is being, you talked about the process by which the city manager provides information to council. And so my question is there any way that based on either on a committee vote that it could be much more clear and formal about our request for a possible extension could be communicated? And the reason I ask is because with the timeline we currently have, and with what is being presented and named as a need for opportunities to engage projects and ideas a bit more deeply, both across ward and kind of bigger picture leading thought, that really we might need more time. And so around being able to make a formal request for consideration for that resolution to be amended, what can we do as a committee to make that request?
Well, Ken, I mean, I don't know that you all have to necessarily, make a vote. I mean, it seems to me that you all are requesting additional time. I think that it would be helpful to get an idea of how much more time you are thinking if it's an additional month. I think it'll just be a matter of city staff just reaching out to council, whether it's through the weekly update or providing an update to the Community Development Housing General Government Committee or the Finance Committee. And that might be, that's still a couple of weeks away. So it'd probably be something more immediate that we would reach out, staff would reach out to council members to gauge, whether they were open to, granting more time for this committee to continue their process. So, I certainly will, commit to doing that, whether we do it in, like I said, the manager's weekly communication to council, or whether we just, call them individually and ask them. But we can certainly do that. But I don't think that you necessarily have to take a formal action today. I think I just need to get a sense of how much more time do you think you need?
May I speak? Ms. Tommy, is the next meeting is when we would be presenting the list to the community for them to have a few weeks to research well, right? At the next meeting?
Mm-hmm. You're breaking up a little bit, Ms. Shavers, but the next meeting as scheduled, now you all can change that, but as scheduled, September 10th, which has not been advertised, so you can definitely postpone that or make a change. But on September 10th, there was supposed to be a public input, a virtual public input. So ideally, the list would go out at least a week before that time, where we would engage people on social media. We will put on our website so that people are aware that the Community Investments Review Committee has developed a list of project ideas or proposals, and they will be able to see the entire list, look at the description, the dollar amounts, and then be able to weigh in on it. The weigh-in piece, I will have to get with the chair and vice chair on exactly how that would look, whether it'll be where they're voting on items that they prefer, whether it's just commenting, whether they're ranking them. But they will have a chance to give you all some feedback, just so you get a pulse on the community about, is this a good idea? What does the committee think? Now, you all represent each ward, and so I think there's definitely you're a diverse group that represents parts of the community. So for that reason, I think the structure of the committee lends to that. But this would be kind of the extra step. Council loves citizen engagement. So that would be the goal. I would just need everything finalized, tightened up, so that we can get it out there for people to weigh in on. But now, if you as a committee are suggesting needing more time to formalize what you have listed here, that's another issue that we can look into.
So what I was thinking, and I may be doing too much, and you guys can let me know that. I was thinking that perhaps, being that many of us, at least 2 to 3 proposals I've heard, we're all pretty much on the same page, going down the same route. And if we combine those initiatives, I don't see us needing but so much additional time, but I could be wrong. If anybody, feel free, please correct me. I don't see us needing as much time, because if you're saying you want a mentoring program that targets this A, B, and C, and I'm saying that we would provide a mentoring program that would provide A, B, and C, then that should be an easy collaboration.
I'm not sure if that's the case, just because we've had so little dialogue. I mean, I think we've each worked on our presentations, and our proposals for quite a few hours, and we've presented them for a few minutes. I mean, I would really like to hear more from everyone. I'd like to ask more questions and dialogue and fully understand. And I think that's what I'm really missing from this committee is dialoguing, understanding, getting to know our committee, forming relationships. Greg, my fellow member, calls it forming, norming, and storming. And we just both are really missing that. That comes from typical, this important work that we're doing. And I wonder maybe if we could have some guidance from the chair and vice chair, if we could maybe split the awards into 4 and have additional meetings. Maybe you could offer some suggestions as to that in between our next meetings. I just worry about, I think that we obviously need to, tailor down our list, but I worry about who decides if that happens and which programs and which initiatives get combined without hearing from the people that presented those.
We have $1 million to work with, and that's, it's from looks the dollars of proposed amounts, we're far exceeding that. So I'm thinking that if we can take and reduce these initiatives, and between the next time we come, determine if these are the items that need to be addressed in this committee, or should they go to another committee. Perhaps that's a way that we can reduce the amounts that are, the initiatives that are before us.
So will we do that right now, or will we do that at the next meeting?
I think we should do it between now and the next time, as we attempt to reduce the numbers that are here. The initiatives that are here, but at the same time to determine, we can present our offerings at the next meeting to determine if they're warranted in this committee, or should they go to another committee.
So you do have next Thursday that there's no meeting next Thursday, and we did it every other Thursday to give that potential collaboration time, research time, whatever you need. So I just wanted to throw that out. It might be a holiday week. I'm looking at my calendar, but so you have a little time, and we could push the 10th back another week, and that'll give you really 3 weeks to do more collaborating or whatever the real proposal is. So Christy, this was your suggestion. Do you have any, what would be the next step in your opinion that would allow for more collaboration?
I'd love to hear from Mr. Pettigrew first, if that's all right.
So my immediate thought is that I do believe that we need more time. I feel like that's out of fairness to the process. I know that many of us agreed to serve on this committee based on a certain timeline, but I think a little time would not hurt, just so engage us fully. I would say additionally though, that between now and the time that we present whatever we're going to present to the public, I think the recommendation that Patrice has made at minimum thus far to push the next meeting back a week, and then that time in between for either additional meetings and opportunities for folks to gather and to collaborate to where we can reduce this list and come to some point of making a recommendation that fits within the allotted amount, and then be able to present to the public with evidence that we have fully engaged every single piece of this, because we've asked questions, we've ended some things, we have done that, but I think there's space for more so that we can really say when we present this to the public that this is what we have discussed based on information we have received, what we have noticed in community, and things that we would like to present for your consideration before we take a vote on recommending this to council. So if we push the meeting back a week, we would need to structure the time in between to ensure that folks have an opportunity, have all the opportunities that they would like, to meet and to be facilitated in a manner that's consistent with the work of the committee, and based on the information that we need to keep record of, as far as our responsibility to council and the citizen of the city. So that's my thought. That's my.
So if I can make a comment, I've been listening very carefully to what Christy has said. And I think what she's asking for is exactly what you just mentioned, that the time between the meeting would need to be structured. So I think she's asking for guidance on how that time would be structured. So just for example, you could, for instance, group these items on this list, perhaps thematically, perhaps randomly. So you had 3 or 4, and then we could divide into smaller groups that are not organized just by ward to discuss the smaller grouping, either to refine the suggestions or to rank them based on some criteria. But all of the things I just mentioned, it's a call for more structure on what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, and we already know the when, which would be have it done by the next meeting. I hope that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I will have to say, however, as the vice chair, I definitely have to defer to the chair in terms of how we do some of those things. But I am in support of that process. I'm definitely in support of figuring out and structuring a process with city staff to be sure we have the resources that we need to be able to meet and make decisions.
And I don't necessarily think it has to be decided right now at this meeting. If you and the chair would like to have more time to discuss it, I thank you, Dr. Canzona. I agree that as a committee, we would appreciate some more direction on how we can meet to accomplish these goals.
I would be happy. Now, this may not be the right answer, but I would be happy if city staff, the vice chair and the chair had a conversation on what that structure could look like, and then give us that as homework. The end result being to produce a better conversation next time that's more focused on our goal, which is refining this list.
Ms. Shavers, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, whatever we decide to do, I'm fine with it. I'm just elated that we are pretty much saying that we want to combine some of the proposals to make sure that we work in the best interest of the constituents. And either way that's done, whether we get an extension from city council members or we utilize time in between the next meeting by putting the next meeting off a week, I'm fine with that. I want to be a team player at all times.
I should add, I suppose, I'm a little concerned about the list overall. Three of the proposals are from me, and they're fine, but I was just throwing ideas out on the table so that we could, discuss them. I didn't think there'd be so few as only 13. And so I'm concerned that the list holistically is not fully answering the mandate of the committee, that it may need some more thought overall. And I don't know if we're past that stage or not, but I wanted to make the comment.
I also feel like the charge of our group is so important and heavy, and Dr. Witt-Glover is no longer able, she had to moderate another meeting, but back to her point earlier, that we're trying as a group to lead to systemic change for both poverty and social justice. I mean, this is so critical to our community, and I just want to give this process the diligence it deserves.
I agree with that, Christine.
I agree with that too, but I also want us to keep in mind that we are aware that there is a great deal of change we can make, but I think we shouldn't overthink that we can make this great change with just $1 million. I think that if that's understood as well, like, we're going to make great change into the community, especially where the need is of greatest, but we only have $1 million. And while that seems like a great deal of money, it's not when we're dealing with things like systemic racism, social justice, poverty. $1 million is not going to cure that, but it is a start. And I hope that we are agreeing with that.
I want to keep in mind that, while we on this group may see it that way, when this goes out to the public, for those that view this as money that was taken to defund the police, so to speak, and to present, a program to them, we want to make sure that they're feel as though that they're getting something out of it versus, feeling like we did it for nothing. Or that maybe we just didn't get it right, because ultimately they're going to look at us on this committee for our decisions that we make for them.
Agreed.
I just want to make a note about what you just said, Ms. McKinney. Just to be clear that when this committee, when council formed this committee, it was not, the funds were not from a defund police. The conversation came about initially. The proposal was to use salary savings from 15 vacant police officer positions and to be able to fund social programs for defund police. Council voted not to do that and decided to form this committee to discuss how to appropriate $1 million for social justice and anti-poverty initiatives. We have since found resources to fund the group, to fund this committee's mission with $1 million, but it was not directly as a defund police type project. So I know it gets confusing and it feels all connected, but this is just a result of the council still wanting there to be this committee to give recommendations on how you would spend $1 million for social justice and anti-poverty.
Good. I hope that that's something that we can express at the onset, because when you're talking to community, I think the last that they heard was that this was a project to defund the police. And so I know when we go out to these communities, or even especially when I'm talking to people in the East Ward, that's what they're going to remember and recall. They may not have gotten that second piece of it. So when we present this, I'll be more than happy to say that other resources was provided to put this project together.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Tony, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not. I had 2 questions about my proposal last meeting, and I had them answered, and I don't know if I should do that now or wait.
Sure, yes.
Would it be appropriate if I shared my screen? Is that something I'm able to do?
Go ahead and try. Meredith may have to give you access.
Okay. All right, are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the Northwest Ward is proposing, well, let me start with the areas of the city that currently have Wi-Fi. 15 years ago, this was one of the questions asked when we were putting forth our proposal. Downtown 4th Street was selected as the pilot for the series for downtown services. Since then, 19 community and recreation centers have materialized over the past 7 to 10 years through a partnership with the Recs and Parks Department and a nonprofit called Winston-Net. In a recent upgrade last year to the Wi-Fi platform, they were able to extend Wi-Fi services to most, if not all, of those facilities. And in many cases, those services reach out to the parking lot and the surrounding areas. So that is really exciting. The website also mentioned other various places, and that wasn't clear. And so I followed up on that with the assistant city manager, and they said that he told me that those places include the Benton Center, the Fairgrounds, Haynes Park, City Hall, the Bryce Stewart Building on the corner of First and Church Street. And those particular Wi-Fi services were implemented at various times as part as an individual and distinct projects. One proposal that I have that would hopefully be fairly low cost is just to advertise this more. I had a very difficult time as a constituent even knowing where these free Wi-Fi were. The 19 community and rec centers 2 weeks ago were not available online, and I had to write multiple people to find out where the other places were. So I would like to, if we could advertise where those free Wi-Fis are, I think that would be a really great start. The Northwest is proposing that we add free public Wi-Fi to the following 16 sites. These were created, I was in contact with the superintendent of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, along with the IT department, and they looked at connectivity data from Winston-Net and their own connectivity data. And they came up with this map is what they shared with me. So if everyone can just look at this, this was really helpful. This is the HAWS is the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem. And this map shows where there's the percentage of people with no internet. And so the red areas that are right in the middle of the city, are 57 to 71% of the population have no internet. And that's really startling. It's wonderful that there's 19 community centers that have free internet access, but that's really problematic for a lot of reasons. It shuts out, because of their limited hours, it shuts out thousands of people that have access due to access. They have, due to time, transportation, and mobility, that they can't use those. So the new locations for public Wi-Fi that I'm recommending would provide incredible access, information, and equity, and lead to realistic systemic change in our city. So we've been talking a lot about change, and I really do believe that broadband, something that's really long-term we could invest in now, would be something that would be systemic. We'd invest in our infrastructure of our city, and it would be something that would last for a very long time. We're becoming increasingly connected to the internet. I think it would really be an equity issue. These are some reasons, just a very few reasons that I believe that access to internet would lead to greater equity. And we can go on and on about why internet is important, but I just think it's such a critical need in our community. The Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, when I said that they touched base with Winston-Net and the city and then looked at where they were deploying the hotspots, they used almost $1 million to deploy hotspot school buses this year. And these are the 16 neighborhoods that they came up with. I believe now I'm looking at it, it's 14 areas that they believed were the most important. And there's different neighborhoods that they have deployed hotspot school buses to. And this is what we're proposing to be the sites that the school district identifies as the highest need for Wi-Fi in our city. Oh, there it goes. I'm sorry, it is 16. I hadn't scrolled to the next page. So these are the apartments, and there's some home parks and other areas, but those were identified in combination with the school district and the city. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for allowing me that time.
I do have a question, maybe two. I think this is very compelling. What you say makes sense. And I apologize, I was not here last time, but my two questions would be, with $250,000, is that a realistic cost attached to actual outcomes? And how long could this be sustained? I mean, are we talking about expanding access for a year in the same way as the school system? Or you mentioned infrastructure, would it be something, a more profound, lasting change?
I have to say that I don't have an IT degree, but I've been in conversation a bit with some people in the city that do. And I'm sorry, I can't pronounce Tom's last name, and Patrice might be able to talk more about this, but there's some very complicated barriers to expanding Wi-Fi. And Damon Duquesne is the assistant city manager. We had conversations about how expanding Wi-Fi, what it looks like, and how it's actually tied to redlining, and how that continues to the process of redlining continues to plague some of our most impoverished neighborhoods and some of the Black and brown neighborhoods in Winston in particular. When they're expanding the cable, so in order to make Wi-Fi, there actually has to be hardline cable laid, which I wasn't aware of. I thought it could be done all over, through towers or through 5G. But when they're talking about Wi-Fi, there has to be actual physical cable laid. And the shortest route to lay those cables is much of the time to some of these neighborhoods that I laid out on this map is over significant highways and railroad tracks. The railroad tracks are proprietary and are really difficult to go around. And then and so are really difficult to cross. And then the major highways like 52 are also very difficult to cross. So I'm not sure I have not provided these 16 sites for the 250,000 yet. I finally got this information back from a school board member. So this is new to Patrice right now. So I'm sorry her numbers do not reflect this latest proposal of mine, the latest information. But I think the city said, and Patrice, can you help me with his last name? Tom
Fresca. Tom Fresca.
He said that the city has been looking at this for some time and they've been slowly expanding at the community centers. But I truly believe the internet is a commodity that is incredibly important to all people, and it's leading to gross inequities. And once we lay the cable, that's the expensive part, it seems. That it would have to take some upkeep, but that's getting the routers to the communities and laying the cable is what is so time intensive. Can you touch base on talk to that, Patrice?
I think you did an excellent job, honestly, Christy. I think you do have that IT degree. I would agree with everything you're saying. I have talked to Tom Kareska at length about this proposal. I think broadband internet access, as they have laid out in the recommendation, is an equity issue. It is vital to so many aspects of people's lives, not only children needing access to the internet, but adults. Now medical providers are utilizing technology, and people doing job searches as they have stated. So there are a number of potential proposals. That $250,000 came from Tom in the sense of this is something potentially that he could put out to bid for cable providers, that they potentially could come up with a plan. They could tap into our existing infrastructure and kind of build on our recreation center infrastructure to expand, and come up with a creative way to maybe have routers that could reach, say, a 10-mile radius or so in low-income communities. And it may be that the 250 may not be enough for all income all neighborhoods that have been identified as low income, but it could definitely be a successful pilot. And so once a pilot is set up, is successful, then you can get more public-private partnerships to expand that. So I think there's so many possibilities with this. I think the next step with this would be for Christy, Greg, Tom, and then maybe the project idea around the virtual for the students to all have a meeting to discuss, hearing from Tom, CIO, about how this could work and the proposal and kind of really tighten it up. But Chris, you've done some excellent work and this information is great. So I do think we need another, or you all, and I can help, make sure that gets set up, but have further discussions. Because both of those proposals are kind of similar, but it might be helpful to hear from Tom how both of those could be potentially merged and expounded upon.
Yeah, I think that there's been so many negatives to come out of this pandemic, but the fact that this study, and where the internet needs are really needed, and being able to identify it, and now we can kind of target where the need is without having to do an additional study. I think, and something Ms. McKinney said, I wonder if this map can also target other areas where there's high need. This says that there's no internet, but I felt like this map, it might help with other things too. This took a long time for the school district to generate for me quite a few days, and they worked really hard on making it. So I think our committee could, I'll share it with Patrice, but it seems like it could be used for other things too.
Yeah, it sounds like you have some more resources now, and even more than those at hand to produce a more fully realized proposal. And so if these are going to be seen by the different members of our communities, it's such a good proposal that I'd like to see it fully fleshed out, so it would have the maximum sort of persuasive power, right? Because I think it's quite good and maybe worth more than $250,000. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. I'm going to stop the screen sharing unless anyone has any further questions. Okay.
Christy, did you say earlier that Dr. Wood Glover has left the meeting?
Yes, she had to moderate another meeting for her job.
Okay. Patrice, I'm not sure, and I was going to ask Dr. Wood Glover if she could help us with this. There was a study done on poverty through the Black Philanthropy Initiative, and I think that would be helpful to us all as we come together. I'm going to see if it's possible, if I could get Dr. Wood Glover's email to see if there's a way for us. There we go. Thank you, Kenneth Pettigrew. That right there is almost like a Bible to describe what our poverty looks like in Forsyth County. And I think it would help us all if we had a copy of that to understand this task at hand, especially as we look at collaborating with one another for this initiative. Kenneth, is there any way that you could help us get extra copies to everyone, or to see if there's a PDF form of that for us to share?
I can reach out to Dree Hooligan at the foundation, who's the director of strategic initiatives, who helps, who staffs BPI, to see what's available to us.
Great, thank you.
Also get a copy of Christie's proposal.
I'm not sure how that works.
Well, I think once the proposal is, when Christy and Greg, and they've met with the IT and kind of fleshed it out some, well, honestly, I think it just kind of depends on the committee's desires kind of for next steps. So I've heard that you all want to maybe do some subcommittees. There definitely will need to be some follow-up for some of these recommendations, potential merging. And so it may be that we have a broadband internet access / virtual youth, I don't know, that the first proposal, I can't remember the title, type next meeting, which will be a smaller meeting. Anybody interested, like Dr. Canzona or anybody who thinks this is an interesting topic and may want to start pulling more resources towards that, we offer that meeting for people to join, and that's the focus. And then you may have another meeting that's focused on tutoring or the museum or some of the other proposals. So I think, like it was stated earlier, kind of categorizing proposals into subtopics, and then we develop those a little bit more and then represent them back to the full committee. And then all of the proposals would then be emailed out to everyone. So I'm okay with whatever you all want to email each other in terms of resources, but if it's not fully developed, it may be premature and just maybe a little bit more time to develop it. Okay, so I'm gonna take some direction from the chair and vice chair on the next steps, just based on what you've heard from the committee. We've heard from several voices, but there's quite a few that we haven't heard from at all. So just making sure everyone that wants to weigh in can weigh in. But then, Ken, if you want to proceed with telling us about next steps.
Yeah, so currently on our agenda, it says that our next steps will be for public comment and weigh in at our next scheduled meeting. I'm going to put a soft pause, say that we're going to put a soft pause on that at this present moment. And that myself, Ms. Bailey, and Patrice are going to meet to formulate what our revised next steps should be, which could include a pushback meeting date or something of that nature. We will try to get that to you as soon as we possibly can, to ensure that there's plenty of time for all of the work that we have talked about. Considering today. So that's the easiest way to say that. Just hold tight.
Okay. Any last comments or suggestions? Is everybody okay with that?
Ms. Tony, I understand that you're going to send us an overview of the initiatives that have been presented, that we can kind of get a better idea of what it is that we're looking at to make that decision.
At some point, absolutely. The goal would have been sooner than later. The issue is the not all of the proposals are fully developed and have all of the information needed to then go to that next step of making it public. So I'm hearing the vice chair saying that we will meet, we will take the existing list and put them in categories based on topic area. Like transportation would be one. You suggested better transportation access for people to their appointments. So there was another proposal about transportation discussions. So it might be, we'll put that in a category and then have a small group meeting only about transportation. Then we'll have a small group meeting only about broadband internet access to homes in low income neighborhoods. And so we'll create those subcommittees based on categories and have further in-depth discussions about those proposals and see where we can combine them, if at all, to one, some stronger combined proposals than all these individual proposals.
Ms. Tony, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Are the proposals that are below the gray line given less consideration?
No, I wouldn't say so. It just that, you know, when we put it out there, if they're not combined with anything else, this will probably be just a reporting thing to council, that some proposals did not come from the committee directly. Now, if it's by way of referral by another committee member, that's fine. So it's not, they're not weighted at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bailey, since you're here now, and if there's no other comments, do you want to step in and, or do you have any comments?
I am so sorry about Murphy's Law. Whatever can happen will happen. Thank God they got us back. We've got some construction going on out here, and somebody hit a pole or something, and the whole neighborhood just went berserk. As of me, I did too. I'm sorry that it happened, but I did get to join in. And if there's no other further business, we will adjourn. I wish you all a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.